Saturday will be putting us to a closure of the financial year 2023-2024. The budget then, or the budget that we're currently on, was a 52.7 trillion shillings budget. Discussions in Parliament with the Parliamentary Committee on Budget had summed it up at 58.3 trillion shillings. That is for the next financial year. However, we then had an addition of 14 trillion, putting it to 72.7 trillion, 72.3 trillion shillings for the next financial year, 2024-2025. Now, with that preamble, I'm just putting you in context of the kind of discussion we are going to be having this morning. We are looking at the national budget, but navigating furthermore Uganda's 2024-2025 tax amendments. Of course, these ones will take effect 1st July 2024. We have some amendments that were discussed in the tax amendment bills that were discussed in Parliament, voted for by the different members in the House. And then we want to look at the insights and the implications this has onto you, a taxpayer, the individual, you our viewer this morning, and then to the business community in the country, the business players, the business persons, and of course the entire economic value chain of the country. I am Joram Paul Sonko. Joining me this morning, I do have a gentleman who serves as a senior tax manager at Ernst & Young, and this is Robert Mbazira. A very good morning, Robert, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Joram, and good morning to you also viewers. My name is Robert Mbazira. I'm a senior manager at Ernst & Young.
Okay. Yeah. Ernst & Young. Let's start from there. What does Ernst & Young do? And, what are the activities that normally happen at Ernst & Young? And how come we have you? Because I want my viewer to know why I have Ernst & Young represented this morning.
Okay. Ernst & Young is a global firm, a professional services firm. Okay. And we provide accounting services. And in the accounting space, you look at auditing, you look at taxation, as well as consulting. Where are you having me here? Probably it's around taxation. I'm the expert to break it down for you.
Okay, and taxation, we should be looking at some of these amendments that will take effect 1st July 2024-2025. But first, off the list, let's look at the national budget for the next financial year, looking at the priority sectors that we do have. And of course, when you look at the priority sectors, my main focus as an individual here is looking at the government programs, but that is not all. Let's first of all dive into what priority sectors have we looked at or do we have ahead of the financial year?
Okay, thank you, Joram. Maybe before we look at the priority sectors, it's also key for us to understand or remind ourselves of the budget theme.
Okay.
This theme has been on for some years now. Probably this is the 3rd or 4th year. And it is about full monetization of the economy through commercial agriculture, industrialization, expanding and broadening the services space, digital transformation, and market access. And here we know very well that 39% of Uganda's total population is not in the money economy.
Very true.
And that explains the theme. Full monetization
they want
of
the
the
50%, the largest, to also tap into the money
Yes,
economy.
the 39%, they want them into the money economy. Yes. So that is the theme, and that's what we shall also ride on come the next financial year. Now, that said, the total budget for the next financial year is 72 trillion shillings. And that 72 trillion shillings, they have gone ahead to break it down to the, by allocating it to the priority sectors. Key among them is human capital development. And here human capital development is getting close to 10 trillion, around 9.9 trillion. And when you look at the human capital development space, they're looking at sectors like education, they're looking at sectors like healthcare and skills development. What are they trying to say? They're basically saying, we already have the schools, but are there teachers? And those teachers have the necessary skills. So now they are coming in to ensure that when our children go to those schools, they would actually find their teachers. When we go to the hospitals, to the healthcare centers, we are able to find their medics who will be able to help us and serve us. So you can see that government is coming in to allocate money into human capital development, which is also very key. The other is about security, as usual. It's getting around 9.1 trillion shillings. And here government is coming in, first of all, to boost law enforcement and national security. What has been moving around recently is about those guys who have special kicks. You can see that nowadays people are actually fearing to move at night, and already that in a way impacts on production. So when they boost security, this in a way would be able to help us grow further our GDP. But also the other thing is, if Jeremy were to go into a restaurant right now and you hear a gunshot, you would automatically run away.
The chances are I wouldn't even wish to go back there.
Exactly. So security remains key. And that is also getting a lion's share, around 9.1 trillion. There is also transport infrastructure is getting around 5.1 trillion. You know very well we are going to embark on the standard gauge railway. Kenya has already made significant strides. Tanzania as well. So that is also really key, and I believe it would help us boost the economy. The other is about private sector development. Private sector development is getting 2 trillion shillings. This is really a good thing. But then also it has a downward side of it. And what is the downward side of it? When you look at government, all its majority of the suppliers are demanding. They're demanding around 10 trillion. Government has allocated 2 trillion shillings to develop the private sector, but only 200 billion for payment
that means
of the domestic areas.
Of the funding.
Yes,
so the financing.
That means that the private sector is going to remain with around 9.8 trillion as areas. Government has not yet paid them. So already that in a way is killing the private sector. That actually means that if you supplied government in the previous year, or this year that is ending 30th June 2024, you would have to pay taxes. That means that even in paying taxes, I've got to borrow.
For you to survive as the private sector.
Yeah, but then also to pay government taxes. Because remember, the income that I would have earned by supplying to government, I've got to declare it to the Revenue Authority.
True.
And to the Revenue Authority, that is already, assuming it was good business, it is a profit. In which case, then it means that you would have to pay the taxes. So I think going forward, maybe what government has got to look on, it has got to ensure that we actually improve the private sector, because that's where we are targeting to get the tax revenue, which we are projecting in the budget. Government, for your information, has projected to collect 32 trillion shillings in the next financial year, moving from the 29
That is from domestic revenue.
Yes, taxes. So that shows you that we really need the private sector, and it would be key if URA is going to achieve its target. And for your information, URA is actually trying its level best. But without the support, without the flourishing private sector, URA is going to struggle to collect those taxes. The other is around the parish development model. Government is allocating, it plans to allocate around 1 trillion shillings. And we know the impact this is actually trying to make to the ordinary Ugandan. The financial inclusion component comes in. The spirit is, of course, meant to empower the local people, ensure that they get into the monetary space, which is a good thing. But key to note, what I've just talked about is the domestic areas bit. If I'm not paying that person who is going to supply the person who has gotten the PDM cash, what they're going to do, because they know that government delays to pay, they're going to increase their markup. Ultimately, are you seeing the multiplier effect onto the economy?
I am.
Yes. So I think that is something government has really to close out this issue of domestic areas. Otherwise, it is crippling the economy.
And also, lest we forget, you also realize that part of the budget for next financial year will be heading to debt financing.
Yeah, sure.
Because we have so many debts to finance, both domestic and then also the debts we get, the external debts that we're supposed to be facilitating. But then also looking at you know, the tax mobilization strategies. When you look at it from the fact that we have 32 trillion shillings that we're supposed to meet in taxation, you've mentioned something to do with the security and how many Ugandans are now really scared of trading simply because of what is, you know, the round kicks that are trending all over. But then there was also a time when the traders went on strike for a week, for about a week, because of IFRIS. And according to the Daily Monitor earlier this week, it was reported that we lost close to 80 billion shillings because of just the 5 days of no action within the center. Now let's look at the revenue mobilization strategies. Is the Uganda Revenue Authority doing enough to ensure that, one, the Ugandans pay their fair share of taxes, and are the Ugandans playing their role to pay these taxes, or they still find it quite difficult to comply?
Okay, thank you.
From your observation of things.
It is, in my view, it is a yes. URA is trying its level best in ensuring that they collect as much revenue as possible. But what we need to appreciate is that tax is a function of an economy.
Yes.
So if the economy is struggling, there is no way URA is going to get those taxes. So one of the things, and maybe to bring it out for the ordinary Ugandan, let me even first talk about the borrowing bit. Because in financing this budget, you also have tax revenue and you have got to borrow. Now, when you look at how much the government expects to collect in terms of taxes, it's around 32 trillion shillings. Now, that is almost 45% of the total budget. That means that the balance, the 56, you're either going to borrow or you're going to go and get grants and donations. Now, 56%, imagine government was a family in your village. It in a way tells you that almost government would be having a loan with every village member. 56%, more than 50% would be close to borrowing. And this, of course, has an impact on the private sector, where URA is going to collect taxes from. So much as they could be having clear mobilization strategies, but the economy is struggling. Businesses, how? You can see that nowadays some people would prefer to invest in government securities than to do business outside there. Because the return is assured.
And it's a growing trend, by the way.
But the question is that sustainable in the long term? Is it going to help our economy? Probably not. And remember also with the borrowing aspect, government then presents itself as the preferable borrower. Why? It is risk-free. Okay? Because it's going to issue out government treasury bills and bonds. Now, when it does so, they're going to crowd out the private sector. And by crowding out the private sector, remember, it's the one that URA is targeting. So it really becomes hard for URA to be able, and that's why, that explains the reason as to why, in the recent years, URA has struggled to meet its targets. We look forward to see whether this year they would be able to achieve it. But overall, you can see that URA is focusing so much. They're doing tax education, but the question is it really enough? Two, you realize that at times they also go overboard. Some businesses are being closed. But then also, we shall be seeing, probably later, if you so wish, we shall be seeing that the government is also coming up with measures like tax waivers to forgive people interest and penalties to ensure that they continue to do business. So my view is it also goes back to the policy makers and not necessarily URA, whether government is going to be able to achieve those revenue targets or not.
Okay. Now let's run to the amendment bills. Starting 1st July 2024, we shall be having some bills that will be amended, and then that means they will be taking effect. I simply want to look at the breakdown of some of these, a brief introduction of some of the specific bills that have grabbed the attention of many of the Ugandans in the past weeks after Parliament passing these bills.
Okay. One of the key amendments that has actually caught the attention of many ordinary Ugandans is around increase of taxes on fuel. which I think ever since I started understanding key basic terms of the economy, it is that tax that they have always gone ahead to impose. And here what is happening, they have increased excise duty on petrol, diesel, and kerosene. And here they are moving each. Currently, the pump price for petrol is on average around 5,200 or 5,300. What here they are saying is that for every liter of fuel, government is going to take tax of around 30%. 30% of that 5,300 is tax. And the tax is also increasing by around 7% before it has been there. For diesel, it is increasing by around 9%. Already, what is this going to have? Remember here, this is a key factor of production. And the focus would, of course, have a ripple effect onto the ordinary Ugandan.
Yes.
Transporting the matoke from Mbarara or wherever it is to Kampala for you to consume at home, the price is going to increase. There would be a multiplier effect on it. Why? Because fuel is expensive. The same applies to the diesel.
Yes.
But then also they have increased the taxes on kerosene from 200 shillings to 500 shillings per litre. Remember, the majority of the Ugandans are in the villages.
And they use it so much.
So much for lighting.
And not so many of them are in the money economy.
Exactly. Now, when you look at that, you realize that we saw in the priority sectors, they have put focus on human capital development, teachers, educational space. Now, here you come ahead and increase taxes on kerosene.
Making it really hard.
Really hard. So much as the children would have attained the education, but are they going to be able to revise?
Late in the night.
Late in the night. So that is going to have an impact. And then also the other thing is that, in a way, to me, it's as if government is trying to discourage probably the use of kerosene. Because now you're increasing the taxes by over 150%.
Yes.
That is really too
from
much.
200 to 300.
Yes. Which would automatically have a bigger impact on to the economy.
Okay. And then also, when you look at some of these implications and anything, from the side of advisory, I'm looking at it from a way that businesses today are highly going to be affected. That is true. And then the individuals are going to be affected. But if you're to advise and you're giving advice to some of the businesses, to survive, because it's now going to be a faster survival effect that we're going to be having for the next financial year, to see how best we can go, because we want to make sure that our economy recovers from the shocks and, of course, from everything that has been happening. But how do you advise? Which sort of advice or what kind of strategies do you think businesses should lay, to stay afloat in the next financial year?
I think one of them, businesses need to appreciate that tax is here to stay. They cannot avoid taxes, but they need to find a better way of thriving amidst this hard economy. One of them is to ensure that, one is to embrace the tax education that URA is probably putting across. Because they need to appreciate that this is the tax regime in Uganda is a self-assessment regime. True, URA would come in to say, you have these taxes to pay. But to you as Joram Enterprises, how much do you think you have to pay? And that is self-assessment regime. At the end of every financial year, they have got to do so. Two, after they have appreciated that, they need to go ahead and register for taxes. Because if you don't register for those taxes, 1-2 years later or 6 months later, URA is going to come and say, you ought to have paid me these taxes. Some of them, for your information, are indirect taxes, which Robert, as your customer, would have paid for. So if you didn't charge me those taxes, you as a business, ultimately you would be liable to pay those taxes. So 2, they should register for taxes. 3, always within the law, there are some small incentives that they need to take advantage of. Most of the businesses tend to think that involving an expert like me is so expensive. But my friend, non-compliance is so expensive. And that you saw very well with the traders. 6 million for non-compliance with IFRIS.
The penalties before the president waived off.
Yes, exactly. So compliance is really key for them. But then also the other thing is people need to, when you look at the economy, people seem to be so much buried into one line, which is trading. The president keeps on talking about agriculture. That is another area to go for, which is still barren. You realize that there is too much to tap into. So that is another area that the ordinary Ugandan has got to go for, in my view.
Okay. You know, we've mentioned about the tax amendments, but one would wonder, why is it necessary to have some of these amendments? If you're going to explain that to the viewer, to the business person, because one would wonder, of course, we've seen their impact. It's going to be really costly. But then it does seem it is a conversation that we most probably have to continue having. Even in the next financial year, we might see some new amendments coming along. If you can explain that to my viewer of how necessary is it for us to have some of these tax amendments?
Interesting. You know, I have some reservations when it comes to
it's
that.
Fair, okay.
Yes, and I've always asked myself, why don't we come up with an organized approach of these amendments? Because you realize that every year
we are having
amendments. Some of them are reactive in nature. But if I'm to respond to your question, is to say that I don't expect a major significant impact onto the economy when it comes to these amendments. Why? You realize that most of them, in the previous year, it was about tax administration, waiver of penalties. But this year's amendments, they seem to focus so much onto the indirect taxes. They seem to focus so much onto the final consumer. Look at the taxes on petrol, on diesel. There is a tax on mineral water. There is a tax on cement. You can see that ultimately they are focusing onto the final consumer. But then also there is an excise duty tax on payment service providers. When you go and use Wave, Bionic, Pay Now, there's going to be a 0.5% on the value of the transaction. So you imagine all that. I know you are going to be able to collect taxes, but ultimately it's going to impact the final consumer. Ultimately, it's going to impact the final consumer. So my ask probably to the Ministry of Finance or government is to come up with a clear tax policy. So to say, maybe in the next 5 years, we shall focus onto the real estate space. We shall focus maybe onto the software or beverages space. Otherwise, when we move haphazard, when we become reactionary, for example, last year, they introduced VAT on the auctioneers. This year, they have come ahead to pass another amendment. You remember last year there was OTT, so in the previous part. So they come into, they're haphazard. We need to come up with a clear approach, and this in a way probably we shall be able to allow sectors to develop. For example, they introduced, there is a tax on cement. This is going to have an impact onto the housing
the
space.
real estate industry.
Yes, and you know already the houses are not enough in Kampala.
And the cost is really high. When you look at, if anyone out there has been looking for a house, you get to realize that the cost of rent is really rising today.
Exactly.
Something that wasn't the case about 5 years ago. But let's take this conversation to Ernst & Young now. Why is it important for, let's say, a business person or a Ugandan to stay informed about the legislative changes, that happen? Because you know the beauty about the ongoing chaos within the traders and then, of course, their wrangles with URA is that I've got to realize how traders have interest in politics lately. It wasn't the case 10 years ago. Many of the traders did not want to even be part of the conversations to do with policies. But when they realize it's now affecting them more, they're now more interested in knowing the legislative terms, the taxes, the policies, everything, because it's hitting home.
Yeah.
Now, how important is it for anyone out there, a viewer, a taxpayer, to have this information with them?
It is, and you know, the viewers are twofold. There are viewers who are businesses, and there are viewers who are individuals. For example, Durham, you could be running businesses outside there, sole proprietorship businesses. So you as a viewer, you need to appreciate that. Like I did say earlier, tax is here to stay.
And you have to comply to pay
And you have to comply.
Because it's an obligation.
Yeah, and for your information, if you don't comply, it eats into your margins, your profits. If you don't comply with IFRIS, they're going to come and close the business. So one of the things that they need to embrace, they need to introduce systems that are going to help them ensure that they comply. One of them is IFRIS, the government system that URA did introduce. It does not only help you to keep your records by moving you from the informal sector to the formal sector, but then also it helps URA to track the taxes that they ought to collect from you. It also simplifies their audits when they come in. So you as an individual, you need to note that some of the taxes, if you do not operate formally, some of the taxes that the final consumer, Robert, would have to pay, you would have to stomach them if you don't register for taxes. A case in point is that for you to register for VAT, the threshold is 150 million shillings a year. A quarter, it would be 37.5 million shillings. And when you move away from the quota, when you break it down, it is around 400,000 per day. Revenue, not profits.
That you're supposed to render.
Yes. Do you realize that almost all businesses in Kampala, all in Uganda, would automatically come into the VAT net? Now, if you don't register for that VAT, it is a cost to you. Because when your rate comes, they're going to take that 18%. And when they take it, they're basically wiping out the profits. Because you do not register for VAT, you cannot claim the VAT that they also charged you. And that, in a way, impacts on businesses. Therefore, my ask to probably government is to increase the VAT threshold.
Yeah, because most of the traders want it increased to at least $1 billion
to at least $1 billion shillings. And that way you are allowing these other small businesses to develop.
Because
as they grow.
By the way, because our worry is most of the small businesses are not growing.
Yes.
And those that are at the verge of growth end up collapsing.
Exactly.
Because the taxes look hefty and heavy on them, and it becomes very unrealistic to stay in business.
Exactly. And some of the businesses, actually, they are struggling to live to their first birthday because of taxes. But if you increase the VAT threshold, you are able to allow them time to grow. And when you allow them time to grow, they're going to employ ordinary Ugandans. You would get pay as you earn. But then later also when they hit the threshold, you're going to get the VAT. And the other taxes would also come into play. They're going to contribute NSSF for their respective employees, which ultimately is going to help you collect more taxes in future.
Okay. And then how can Ernst & Young, a company or an organization you're working for, help out on, these businesses? Which kind of advice do you give to your clients, and in such a time where businesses really need legal advisors, legal, business support coaches and everything? How can you support? How do you step in to support these businesses and individuals maybe?
We usually start even before you get established as a business. We are able to advise you which form you should take of business when you're registering. After that, we can also help you register with URA. You realize that some entities, some companies, some individuals register for taxes that they ought not register for. And when you register for them and you do not, for example, file returns because it's a self-assessment regime, they're going to penalize you for not filing. And those penalties would be due. Now, after registering, you're hoping you to register. We go ahead to assist you even in the day-to-day bookkeeping. There are so many businesses where proprietors are not even so sure of the profits that they are making. At times they think they are making profits, yet in actual sense they are incurring losses. So we hope you also to do the bookkeeping, to do the accounting, or we also come in to do the auditing. And ultimately at the end, because remember, in filing your income tax returns, if you have turnover or revenue of over 500 million shillings, you ought to use audited financials. That's where CPA comes in, audited financials. And in using those audited financials, we shall help you to do the filing for those returns.
Okay. And as we're summing up with our conversation, Robert, I would want to hear your parting shots. But with your parting shots, I would also wish to have some advice that you would give to our policymakers as we are getting into the next financial year. Because now everything is done. We are only waiting for the budget reading, by the way.
Yeah.
So what next? And I do know after the start of the financial year, consultations will start for the next 2025-2026 financial year.
Yeah, sure.
But what advice would you give, and what would be your parting shots as well?
Okay, thank you, Jerome. One of them is to the taxpayers. Taxpayers need to know that even in these amendments that have been introduced, much as they are new taxes, there is also a window for them to benefit from, and that is around the tax waiver. There is a tax amnesty where if you pay the taxes that were due by 30th June 2033 and you pay them by 31st December 2024, you'll be forgiven the interest and penalties. So that is a good window for you or for us as taxpayers to probably benefit from. And here you may not have the full amount, but whatever you pay for, you get an equivalent of the interest and penalties. You are forgiven that. And remember, these interest and penalties, these are expenses in your books that ultimately eat up your profits. So if you're able to pay, if you're able to mobilize some funds and pay some taxes, that is also good for you, because in a way you'll be saving on the interest and penalties that you would be asking for come 1st Jan 2025. Away from that, I would also encourage probably government, the policymakers, that instead of focusing on tax deepening, let us widen the tax base. I'll just give an example. In the morning while I was driving to office, along the traffic lights, I saw thousands of border borders. But these owners of the border borders, when do they ever pay income tax? Because probably this border guy, every day, is supposed to report 10,000 to the owner of the Bajaj or the border border.
The actual owner, it will be just automatic.
Yeah, and all that money goes untaxed. So instead of focusing on people who are already paying so much tax, go for those who are not yet into the tax net. Because remember, these border borders, they have number plates. They are registered. So you are able to know who the owner is. And in a way, you go for the income tax they are earning. Because someone cannot have over 5 border borders, how do you ride them? That means that in a way you're already in business. So let us focus on widening the tax base. And we could start with the low-hanging fruits. We could first go for those. But then also the other is, I have issues with tax exemptions. They are really good. But you realize that we lose so much in these tax exemptions. The other is around government expenditure. Government we need to live within our means. You saw we moved from 58 to 72. But already, even with 72, from onset, even before the year starts, it is a deficit budget
that we are operating.
That we are operating with. And we know that deficit budgets drive inflation. So that is one way we need to be more frugal when it comes to expenditure.
All right, thank you very much. And Robert Mbazira is a tax expert from Ernst and Young. He's a tax manager, senior tax manager. That is the right word to use. Our conversation was looking at navigating Uganda's 2024-2025 tax amendments, but then also giving a brief look into the next financial year budget. That is a 72 trillion budget for 2024-2025. And that is it for Good Morning Uganda Extra. And right now I'm taking you to Namugongo to see what is happening there in regards to the preparations of Martyrs' Day, 3rd June 2024.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
UBC is the national public broadcaster. We educate, inform, entertain, and inspire our audiences. You can watch us on free-to-air channel 001, DSTV channel 282, GoTV channel 371, Star Times channel 201, Zuku TV channel 20, and Azam TV channel 350. Even when your subscription expires, you can still watch UBC for free on your pay TV platforms.
National Heroes Day of Uganda takes place on 9th June every year to commemorate the brave people who laid down their lives during the Ugandan Bush War that took place between 1981 and 1986. This year, the 35th Heroes Day will be commemorated under the theme Hail Our Heroes, a secure Uganda is now reality. On Sunday 9th June 2024, all roads will lead to Mpenja Church of Uganda Primary School Playgrounds, Mpenja Sub-County in Gomba District. Join us to witness heroes from different parts of the country receive medals to recognize their contributions to the betterment of Uganda from His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, who will be the chief guest on National Heroes Day. All this will be broadcast live on your national broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Martyrs' Day is commemorated in Uganda on 3rd June annually. The day commemorates the 45 martyrs, both Catholic and Anglican, who were killed on the orders of Kabaka Mwanga II, then King of Buganda between 1885 and 1887, for their refusal to renounce their Christian faith. On Monday 3rd June 2024, Nebi Catholic Diocese will animate the celebrations under the theme, "But as for me and my household, we shall serve the Lord." Joshua 24:15. For the Anglican site, the Rwenzori cluster, which comprises of Munyoro Kitara, East and South Rwenzori, plus Masindi Diocese, will animate the celebrations under the theme, focusing on conforming to the truth of God's Word, Romans 12:1-2. Join us for the live broadcast of the celebrations on Monday 3rd June at Namugongo.
Well, it is a good morning, our viewers of UBC TV, and I am by the names of Robert Onyango, just coming to you from Namugongo Catholic Martyrs Shrines, where we are giving you the latest update in as far as the preparations and anxiety here at the shrines as we head to the final lap of celebrations for this year 2024. As you can see behind me are multitudes of pilgrims who are lining out this morning outside the shrine, because we understand inside by this time, I think from morning, that is around 5 up to where we are, they are trying to do some security mop-ups, and after security concluding that exercise, they will allow in pilgrims to go and enjoy the vicinity and the services inside the shrine. So this is the situation out here, but across major town roads, Chireka, Banda, Ntinda, Naria, where we have gone through this early morning, as early as 6 a.m., pilgrims are coming in, and this time round in big numbers from different dioceses and parts of the country, to make sure that by the time we head to 3rd June, that is Monday, they will have already taken shape and position here at the shrines, not to miss the events of these celebrations. Then I'll be speaking to a few members of the general public, mainly the pilgrims, as we understand Nebi Diocese is animating this year's Martyrs' Day celebrations, and I will be joined by Father Charles from Nebi Diocese, who has been part of the trekking program from Nebi. We understand they have covered 450 kilometers, so that yesterday they arrived here, and Father Onen will be joining us to give us the details of the situation update on WOW and how they are making life in this place. Father Onen, good morning. Just move a bit here close. Wow, morning.
Good morning to you.
I understand you arrived in this place yesterday evening or midday. What is the latest you can share with us in as far as the pilgrims you led to this place yesterday?
Yeah, in fact, it is joy now being experienced. Why joy? At last, they have reached the land of the martyrs. they have stepped on the soil where Karole Lwanga, Charles Lwanga, was burned. So this is the greatest joy. Now their struggle is to change this aspiration, to guide them to reach heaven. Because Karole Lwanga, Charles Lwanga, Mbaga Tuzinde, Achilles Chiwanoka, Noah Mwagali, Luga Banabakintu, they are no more here. Where are they? They're in heaven. That's what our faith tells us. So now, slowly, with the help of His Grace Archbishop-elect, Raphael Rash Paumon, slowly is trying to let them to know that this is the beginning of the longest journey. This is the journey to heaven. And I, for myself, that's how I take the whole thing. And we have all this what's happening right now, the checkup by the police, maybe security operative, we take it in good faith because they're trying to also to protect us. But more so, we try to imagine, for those of Charles Lwanga, Kizito Muto, Matea Mulumba Kalame and the rest, that it wasn't peaceful like this. For them, they were being coerced, being beaten. At least for us, you see people are giving us tea, we are taking breakfast, giving us water. For them, they were not given water.
But how is it supposed to be? Are we supposed to take the same journey which the Kizito de Kalori took of enduring pain and sacrifice?
Exactly. There is no salvation without the cross. There is no gain without pain, unless you suffer and then you can gain. So the Karoli, Charles Lwanga, Mbaga Tuzinde, Yusuf Mukasa Baleko Dembe, they've given us a lot of learning to pick. And that is the enduring the pain. Even we should endure. All those who are making pilgrimage here, they have to endure the pain. And it is much easier for them because we have people to emulate the example. Those people they suffered. So their suffering helps me as one, I myself, look at how they suffered. I'm strengthened. In fact, the suffering I'm getting is less compared to theirs. It's even the spearing, the burning. You can imagine Charles Lwanga started being martyred from the toe there, from the feet, being burnt, and the fire coming up here. And he doesn't renounce his faith. Soon I think of it, I say, hey, it makes me have a lot of questions. I say, hey, I better follow them. And I'm more strengthened, brother. All this journey, this 450 plus years, for me it is not much. And that's why you see I'm very strong.
Well, what is the latest you can share with us in as far as the group you led yesterday here with the bishop from Nebi?
The group was so joyful, even the priests. And then I was struck by one priest who came, followed us. He said, hey, Father, you have made it. I say it is by the grace of God. Because the way it was so not easy. You get the feet, you see your feet is almost cracking. And you feel like pouring water. But now if you pour water on the feet also now, walking becomes, because now the sand will become very slippery. But all in all now you see, hey, I have to move ahead. And then I for myself, I can also go in front. Because I go in front, I will leave the flock behind. So I want to be either in the middle or as before. I cannot. Because being a priest and being given to be a spiritual father for them, I have to be behind. So it was very, very painful. I want to pull them, but I can't pull them. The people are already worn out. So you have to go, come back, Then I was taught to be patient with them. Because I was strong enough, but not for them, I have to be patient. Yeah, so this is what I've learned. And I'm happy that I've bear the bone, the suffering they're here, and they're now very joyful.
They're joyful?
Yeah, they're very joyful, having reached there. In fact, now the pain they get, they don't mind much about it. And the checkup being done, they're happy. Say no, for that good also.
There are no some inconveniences. We understand some 1 or 2 free might be at this place, not only at this place, but might have come to Kampala for the first time. Are there inconveniences?
Yeah, many. You know, we come from very far place. Maybe also hard to reach place. There are some who have come at the border with DRC, a place called Ozorese there, after Gamba, Arikpa. That's in Zeri now. In fact, it's like from here to there, and then you reach DRC, their border. But now, they are welcome because first of all, having come on foot, having walked on foot, they understand the whole situation. And then the inconveniences being given here, they are able to accept it for the greater glory of God, because it's through this suffering that they're also knowing more about Kampala, and also coming with old people. See, the church is one. Whether you are a Uganda, an Aluru, you are Congolese, a Congolese, from Rwanda, Tanzania, we are one. This is the joy. And for us, when we are moving, wherever we stop in the parishes, we will come. Go to meet our classmates, parish mate. So having started together, so we feel at home.
Lastly, is there any program you can share with us for Nebi particularly, since you are already here at the shrine? How are our days before we reach Namugongo are going to look like for today, Thursday? Is there any program for Nebi Diocese?
Yeah, there is mass like yesterday because programs already put, and then other dioceses have arrived, and even in Central here already having mass. So since we are done hosting, we give way for them. That's the greatest part of the church, the Catholic Church. You give leeway with much respect. So since we are done hosting, we give them way to celebrate the masses first. Then for us, we're going to come in the afternoon, in the evening. Either we shall have the mass at 3. But yesterday we had it at 7, when people have all the rested. So the same for me now. I'm trying to move around to see the Christians, but they know in the program that they're going to have the mass with their bishop at 3.
Where are our disabled guys, pilgrims?
They were within because they've all their bag, they've left the bags, they've all been brought out. Now the dogs, the police dog, to sniff, to see that there's no scare of the bomb, so they're checking. Then so all will be accorded back, but so far they're all out. I can't because I slept in a different place. So I came, I wanted to see them, but now I got everybody out. So now to see.
Thank you, Father Charles. Lastly, your full names and the position you hold in Nebi Diocese.
I am Reverend Father Bueka Charles, a Diocesan priest of Nebi Catholic Diocese. I am currently caretaking Panyangosa Parish to be a parish. How a lot of people can help us. To become a parish is not easy. A lot of around 20 demands put for us to fulfill them. And then in the school, I am the deputy head teacher of St. Maximilian Kolbe Parochitesina Secondary School. And I'm also the director of Legion of Mary in the diocese.
Mary, thank you. He holds a lot of titles and assignments, but thanks for sharing with us. You can continue, Father Charles, but we'll keep on engaging you as to when need arises. That has been Father Charles from Nebi. He's among the 3 priests who walked alongside the 516 pilgrims from Nebi Diocese for the journey which has been covered within 14 days. We will continue with this broadcast here. If my camera person can give you what exactly is happening here. As I said earlier, there is a security check or mop-up inside. So that's why most of these pilgrims, you see them standing or lining outside the shrines. But as when the police or security finishes up the mop-up exercise, they will again allow them to get in and take positions, probably have a rest, or even later on in the day be part of the mass, just like you have heard it from Father Charles from Nebi Diocese. As I said earlier, along major routes in Kampala, pilgrims are trying to make it a point and a deal to ensure that they reach here in time. Of course, to avoid inconveniences, but then it speaks to the magnitude, it speaks to the preparations, because we understand security is already stretched, but this is the job they are trained and meant to do. So we believe by the end of 3rd June, that is Monday, they will also take credit. We have seen how policemen and UPDF have been part of the pilgrimage along the major routes as they have been moving with the pilgrims. Almost every route of Kampala, there is a group of 2 or 3 or 5, but there is security trying to guide them to make sure that all is well until they make it here, and probably they will also safeguard them as they return to wherever they are coming from. So this is the momentum at Namugongo. Business is still at a low peak. We are told we expect a lot of momentum to build up by tomorrow, that is Friday. But then, according to the organizers, not only Nebi Diocese but the host diocese of Kampala Archdiocese, they are expecting between 1.5 million and probably 1 million pilgrims to attend the Monday Mass, but within Saturday and Sunday, they expect between 1.5 or 2 million floating pilgrims to be within this place of Namugongo shrines to ensure that we have the best celebration as a country. This is an event which attracts pilgrims from almost every corner of the world. We have pilgrims who normally come from Kenya, and a few are already here. But yesterday night we were told over 600 foreign pilgrims had already been registered as some of those who have already arrived here at the shrines. We expect the number to shoot up because we have pilgrims coming from Tanzania, pilgrims from Nigeria, Rwanda here, our neighbors, DR Congo, and the rest of the world. We will move with the camera person almost through this stretcher, and I give you a clear feel of what exactly is happening here at Namugongo Mata Shrines. We are stationing at the Catholic shrine to make sure that you don't miss this morning brief of what exactly is here. As you see those images on your screens, these are our mothers, these are our children, these are our young boys and girls who are eagerly waiting so that when security finishes up the mopping process inside the shrines, they will of course be allowed to take up their positions and enjoy the rest of the day. They have come from far, they have walked from different districts and parts of the country. They have come here with only one purpose: to be part of this year's celebrations. They want to enjoy the Mass. Some are coming here for the first time. Some have been there or here in many years. Some are just, you know, we are having a cross-section of pilgrims for this year's celebrations. We have the old, the young, the youth. I can say the bad and the good. That's a better word I can use, because this is almost an event which attracts people from all walks of life. And when I said the bad, I mean it, because that is most especially one of the negative challenges here at the shrines, because police and security are always also on a do-die game, because they make sure that whoever is here is safeguarded, so that by the time he or she leaves the Mata shrines, goes back peacefully or in a very convenient way. So security is in here and they are closely monitoring. They are covert and undercover security forces. We understand police is also going to be later on addressing us to issue more guidelines and to how and when people will be accessing these shrines. But as the norm has been almost on every year, that part of the roads nearing the shrines are no going zones for motorists, but they give way to the pilgrims who are mainly using the foot. You know, the station looks like that, and we are not sure at what time the mop-up will be completed, but we want to believe it will be done in a very short time and probably give way to the pilgrims who have stood here for almost 3 hours waiting for that process to be concluded. And as soon as it is concluded, they will be given an opportunity, but through security measures and checkups, to re-access the shrines and of course follow the programs of the day. For viewers of UBC, we want to first hold it from here, but then make a deal with us. We will keep here at the shrines until the last person leaves Namugongo. That is on Monday, probably in the evening. I'm Robert Onyango.
Martyrs' Day is commemorated in Uganda on 3rd June annually. The day commemorates the 45 martyrs, both Catholic and Anglican, who were killed on the orders of Kabaka Mwanga II, then King of Buganda between 1885 and 1887, for their refusal to renounce their Christian faith. On Monday 3rd